Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Books and Books, right here in the cultural heart of Coral Gables. We're so happy to have you with us. My name is Steve. On behalf of everyone here, welcome. While you are silencing your cell phones, please take a look at our Books and Books newsletter. This will give you a synopsis of all the wonderful events we have at Books and Books just about every night of the week. There's usually something for everyone here. We have celebrity signings, kids events, Spanish events, poetry readings, first-time authors, just about everything you could want for anybody's taste. You can pick up a copy of this or give us your email address at booksandbooks.com. That way we can send you updates for everything that goes on. And as you will see by the lights and the cameras throughout the store, we are live streaming this event tonight, as we do many of our events. This is being broadcast all over the world to whoever has internet access. And in that regard, you will see some cameras pointed at the audience. So for the benefit of those that may be watching you, please make sure you're sitting next to who you're supposed to be sitting next to. I also remind you that flash photography interferes with the live stream presentation, so if you could refrain from doing that, we really appreciate that. Anyway, you can take a copy of the newsletter, or as I say, get your email online for us so we can send you stuff that goes on so you don't miss anything. And while we love to have you in the store, of course, you don't need to be. If you're watching online, you can always call the number on the screen below. And you can call the store and give us an order for a book that we'll have signed for you. We'll ship it to you just about anywhere in the United States for free. Overseas might be a little more expensive. Or you can even ask a question of the author while the event is in progress. So you can ask her and see your question be read online. But tonight we're very happy to welcome Zane, whose real name is her new novel, The Other Side of the Pillow. Zane is the New York Times bestselling author of Afterburn, The Heat Seekers, Dear G-Spot, Getting Buck Wild, The Hot Spot, Total Eclipse of the Heart, Nervous, Skyscraper, Love is Never Painless, and Shame on It All. Her series, Zane's Sex Chronicles, see, I got so nervous I couldn't even say it. Zane's Sex Chronicles and The Jump Off are featured on Cinemax, and her best-selling novel, Addicted, has been adapted for a major motion picture with Lionsgate Films. She's the publisher of Streetboard Books, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. She lives in Washington, D.C., where I'm sure it's much cooler. Please welcome Zane.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be back here. I think the last time I was here is October of 2012. I was in this store. But I'm very happy to be back here. This is my latest book, The Other Side of the Pillow, that just came out on August 5th. And what it is about in a nutshell is I wanted to do a book that really explored how two mature people have a relationship. So the main character in the book, Chemistry, is a high school principal in Washington, D.C. She has everything together in her life, but like a lot of women, the one thing she does not have is a successful relationship. She's been through a lot of negative relationships in her life. She is one of the women that feels like, I'm just giving up. I'm never going to have a successful relationship. And she's very, very bitter. And I didn't want her to be just the ordinary bitter. I wanted her to be the ultimate bitter. So the book actually opens up with a poem, actually my first poem I've ever put in the book, called Bitter. And she's at a spoken word night. And, there are all these guys. They see her go to the stage and think she's attractive and everything. And then she commences to turn them off by reading this poem. So, and I can't rhyme well, but it's still, some poetry is poetry. So she gets up and she says, hurt, pain, anguish, bitter. This is how I feel as a woman who has been deceived, betrayed, disrespected, humiliated, dismissed, used, demeaned, abused, mistreated. It makes no sense. No sense at all. No sense at all. I am a good woman, a brilliant woman, a compassionate woman, a loving woman, an educated woman, a beautiful woman, a romantic woman, a unique and special woman. So why do men overlook me or come into my life and play games, use Jedi mind tricks, spit out bullshit lies, expect me to share dick, expect me to tolerate their shit? Say one thing and do another, call me names and expect me to be their lover? Hit on me and then try to kiss me, talk shit behind my back? Hurt, pain, anguish, bitter. Those are the words that describe me. Those are the terms that define me. Now it is time for me to find me before it is too late. And my heart can no longer participate in what people call love. In a true relationship, bitter, that's me. So as you can see, she's very bitter. so, so you would think, most men would run the other way. So there's a young vascular surgeon in the audience who's watching this whole thing, and his name is Tevin. And he's divorced. He had a failed marriage. And instead of running from chemistry, he actually approaches her, and even she cannot believe that this man is trying to talk to her after. Because for her, it was more of, a cleansing experience, getting up and really expressing her emotions at this event. So needless to say, he approaches her and attempts to start breaking down her walls. And it's not easy. But what this book really is about is how it is possible for a woman as bitter as chemistry to find love if she meets a man and they're willing to be transparent, if they're willing to be completely honest, and if they're willing to make adjustments within themselves to try to make something work if they really truly want it to work. And I feel like, and the reason I wrote this book, I always tend to, when I'm sitting down to write a book, I don't know how many people know, I also have been answering advice emails since 1997. And over the years, I've been the advice columnist for Ebony Magazine, and I've written dozens of relationship articles for Essence and so on and so forth. But at the time when I sat down to write a new book, I noticed that I was getting a lot of emails from women as young as 19 to, their mid-50s who were all saying the same thing. I'm a good woman. I'm successful. I have my own home. I have my own car. I have a good career, but I have not had a relationship in 4 years, 5 years, 8 years. What is wrong with me? Why can't I meet a good man? And my response to them is a lot of women, at the first sign of trouble, they're running the other way. A lot of times no man is going to be perfect, but you have to try to give someone a chance, because otherwise you're only cheating yourself in the long run. Like my previous novel to this, The Hot Box, Milena, the main character, had not had a relationship in 8 years after she left her fiance at the altar after finding out he cheated on her. And he went on to live his life and date and have fun. And she realized after 8 years that the only person she really hurt by shutting herself down was herself. Because while he went on, she continued to just remain stagnant. So the book is told in 7-chapter increments from the woman and from the man, and it shows how men and women view certain circumstances and relationships differently. And of course, that's my whole toned down version of what the book is about. There's a whole cast of supportive characters. He has a best friend who's also a doctor and who's married and who's doing the most. He has his father who has his regrets for mistreating his mother. He has several different people in his life. And then she has her best friend, Winsome, who's had trouble finding out what she wants to do with her life. She can't even decide whether she likes men or women. Her only job is being paid to write positive reviews on Google and stuff for different companies. She's, still trying to find her way in life. And when chemistry decides to become committed to someone, Winsome has issues with that because she's so used to chemistry being there for her, and that happens a lot. So the book examines a lot of different things, like, what happens when a woman, decides to be a stay-at-home mom and dedicates her whole life to raising her kids, and then she and her husband end up divorced. What does a woman do then? So it tackles a lot of those different issues. And so far, the feedback has been really good. Some women told me they need to go see a therapist after reading the book. It made them examine, really take a hard look in the mirror of who they are. Other women have said that it gives them hope, after not being in a relationship for a long time. They now feel like maybe, there's a possibility. So it really is just something to spark discussion, is what it really is. And it also is going to be my first stage play, which launches October 21st in Dallas. And then in the spring, beginning in February, we're going out to as of now, 42 additional cities, including Miami. So I'm very excited about that. And as he mentioned, I also have my first feature film coming out finally, based on my first novel, Addicted, that was first published in August of 2000. And it's a book that is published in several different languages. I'm very excited about it being my first film because it wasn't my first book because the Sex Chronicles Shattering the Myth was my first book. But of course that ended up turning into a TV series. So my second book now is becoming a major motion picture. It'll be in theaters October 10th. And some of you may have already seen the trailer. If not, you can just Google it. But it is showing attached to several films currently in theaters, and it is being aired on television. It stars Sharon Lill, Tasha Smith, Boris Kojo, Tyson Beckford, William Levi, Kat Graham from The Vampire Diaries, Emma Yahtzee Corialdi, and Maria Howe from the NBC series Revolution, which is interesting because she just emailed me today and said she realized that we're related. So that's pretty funny. So I'm excited about the movie, but Addicted is really about a married woman who has a bona fide sexual addiction that stems back to something that happened in her childhood. And the reason I originally wrote Addicted is because I wanted to accomplish several things with the book. One, I wanted to show that women are sexual beings and that we do have desires and needs just like men. I wanted to show that things that happen to us in our childhood directly reflect who we become as an adult. I wanted to show how important communication is in relationships, because in her marriage, her husband, Boris Kojo, feels like they have a perfect marriage, but she doesn't feel the same way, and she continuously tries to talk to him about it, but she doesn't want to hear it. I mean, he doesn't want to hear it. And lastly, I wanted to show that there's nothing wrong with seeking therapy if you need help. And even though Zoe really in the beginning seems like the weakest character in the whole situation, she's actually the strongest because she's the only one that really went and sought help for her issues. And particularly also, in the African American community, it really is, considered a stigma of weakness to seek therapy. And it's so funny because when I was in Atlanta, I saw the real Dr. Marcella Spencer, that's the psychiatrist in the book, my friend, Dr. Angela Shannon, who I kind of modeled the character after because when Angela and I were young, when she decided to become a doctor, she kind of was on the edge about becoming a psychiatrist because she said, I'm not sure I'll be able to build up a practice. So now, she has a very successful practice, and she's been a psychiatrist for a long time, but unfortunately, she is also one of the biggest psychiatrists in the Atlanta, Georgia prison system. So a lot of the people she deals with are the serial killers, the men who have killed, 23 women, or the serial rapists and stuff. And all of that is because they never got the help that they needed, when they were younger, because nobody, ever recognized it or they didn't go seek it. So that was one of my main purposes in writing Addicted. They do have, if you want more information, you can go to zanesaddicted.com. And they do have a website, addictedgroupsales.com, where people can purchase group tickets and or rent out entire theaters. And there are actually quite a few groups that are planning on doing that. In addition to that, I have a surprise for everyone. I always have to do stuff different. And I don't know if y'all know that, but I always got to do stuff different. So, as many, books that have been turned into films, I said, I want to do something different. So what I decided to do is I wrote a small but very juicy sequel to Addicted called Addicted with a Twist. And so, but the only way that people can get the book, and they get the book free, is if they purchase a movie ticket on fandango.com or movietickets.com. And so the book starts out approximately 4 years after the original book ends. And I'm just going to say it's, interesting. So just and so if you purchase your ticket online, you will get a code to be able to get that free book, and it's a book, like I said, that is only attached to the movie. So, and also, we're already proceeding. They're so optimistic about Addicted that we're already proceeding with the pre-production of Nervous, which is the next book in that series. And I'm currently finishing the third book in that series, which is called Vengeance. And the main character in Nervous makes the one in Addicted look like innocent and virginal. I'm just going to say that. I don't know how many of you have read Nervous, but it's a much, Addicted is like the calm one, like to kind of get you used to me. And then Nervous is much more interesting. Well, I'll just say this. When I sat down to write Nervous, I said, I wonder if I can pull off writing a book about one woman who is nervous around men, has never had a boyfriend, and who is a virgin, and a woman who is a proud to be promiscuous whore, for lack of a better word. But the key is that they're the same person. So, yeah, they're the same person. And so it's a really fascinating book that explores a lot of stuff. But what I wanted to pull off was by writing the voice in these two women, because the woman has a multiple personality disorder. I wanted to see which person, John Quinnett or Jude, readers would become more attached to. Because John Quinnett is the type, she's real innocent, she's intelligent, she goes to work every day, she, is just a sweet young lady. And then Jude, because she's a multiple, she's not a real person. So Jude is the type of woman a lot of women would be if they didn't have any fear of being judged, if they didn't have any responsibility. Because since she's not a real person, she just goes around and does whatever. And so what was interesting, I wanted to see which character women would like better, and so that's going to be my next movie. Let's see, what else do I have going on? So in January, I have a book coming out. I finally sat down and wrote a book on writing and publishing, because I get that question a lot, because I successfully self-published. I ran a small press, and I've been running a major imprint at Simon & Schuster for nearly 10 years. And I'm actually launching a new imprint in February. I'm very excited about the new imprint. Is actually named after my book, which is Infinite Words. And on the new imprint, I am publishing books that I feel are really out of the box, so to speak, or very, very unique. So one of the first books that I'm publishing is called The Trouble with the Truth by Edna Robinson, who actually is now deceased. But The Trouble with the Truth was originally supposed to be published by HarperCollins in the 1960s, but they pulled it off their list because it was very similar to To Kill a Mockingbird, which came out the same year that they also published. So now, some 60 plus years later, I'm actually publishing the book. And so it's a period piece about a young girl growing up in the 1930s. I'm also doing a book called Snatch by David Saperstein, who wrote the book Cocoon, that ended up being turned, into an Academy Award-winning movie. So it's a very, so all the books are very unique in nature. So I'm doing that. But the book itself, Infinite Words, A Comprehensive Guide to Writing and Publishing, comes out in January. And it really is how, the first part is on writing, and I really break down the entire writing process, outlining this, I wants to share the stage with me, outlining character description, disciplining yourself to be a writer. I break down how to write in different mediums, because I'm one of the few writers that actually can write nonfiction, fiction, television, and film, and now stage. And I'm also doing a Broadway musical, by the way. So I break down the differences, the commonalities between those processes, and also the differences. And I even go through how to write the difference between a 30-minute sitcom and a 60-minute drama, and all the different things. I break it down completely. And then in the second section, I go over, how to get an agent, how to get a publisher, what the whole publishing structure is like, what you should expect. And I also go over marketing. I go over, finding your niche market, unique ways to market your book, social media, because that's really how I started. I mean, I didn't even do a book signing for like 4 years. I think I sold over like 2 million books before I ever did an actual book signing. So, and that was before Facebook and MySpace and all of that kind of stuff like that. So I really talk about the importance of marketing yourself and the difference between being a writer and being an author, because there is a difference in those two things. And I also conclude the book with several writing exercises that can really challenge people and kind of open up their minds on how to do things. And I talk about how the difference between writing a nonfiction book on a subject and doing a memoir. So it's a really it's a comprehensive guide to writing and publishing. And I'm very happy to get that done because I do get so many questions about it. And under my imprint, my current imprint, I actually publish a book every single Tuesday, at least one book. So it's been an interesting ride because I never planned on doing really any of this. But it's great to be able to not only, this is my 30th published book, and I have published more than 100 other authors, including some New York Times best-selling authors, and I have some authors that I have mentored that are up to book, like Allison Hobbs. I think her book number 26 or something is about to come out. So I have really tried to create careers for other authors. And even with new ones, the first question is, if I decide to acquire a book, my question is, well, do you have a second book? You know, because a lot of times for me, my goal is to really establish them, you know, as writers. Does anybody have any particular questions? Because I can just run my mouth. You know, everybody's looking like, anybody have any questions at all? No?
Are you involved also with children's books?
I have not done children's books yet. I actually have a young adult series that I plan on writing myself. I just got to get around to it. You know.
I wanted you to just elaborate a little bit more on the author / the writer.
Well, I'll give you a writer is someone, like when I write, like I'm going back tonight and I have to do some, I get back to the hotel, I have to continue like fleshing out or finishing the rewrites for the play. So I do that all alone, you know, that kind of stuff like that. An author is a personality, you know, so, and it's funny because again, this just all comes real natural to me. But you have to engage your readers. I'll give you a perfect example. One year we were doing the Baltimore Book Festival, and we had this huge tent set up. And so the festival runs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So Friday night is like only 4 hours. So I go out there, and my authors are sitting behind the tables like prima donnas, you know, waiting for people to walk up to them to ask them what their book is about, you know, that kind of stuff like that. So I said, okay, so I just peeped the whole scene. So by the time they came out the next morning, all the tables were pushed to the back of the tent. All the chairs were gone, except for one on each end for people to, you know, ring up books. And I made them, you know, engage themselves with the people. And, you know, for me, like, for example, on Facebook, I'm like the 12th most popular author on Facebook. And I'm number 12, so number 11 is J.K. Rowling, and number 12 is J.R.R. Tolkien, you know, who wrote Lord of the Rings. Thank you. Y'all got a special kind of heat down here. But, you know, and then it's just really just being a personality. I also must say that I'm very flattered. I've won a lot of awards, but recently, in the final issue of Jet Magazine, their final print issue, they, you know, had a list of all the people that they considered to be the most accomplished in each field. And I was blown away when I saw the Masters of the Word, and I was one of the 9 authors that they named, and it was like the most wonderful company I've ever been in because the other 8 were Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Alex Haley, James Baldwin, Octavia Butler, trying to remember, but anyway, it was an amazing list. Oh, August Wilson. So I was very flattered to be included in that list. I just wanted to mention that because that's like huge. Yes, ma'am.
How old were you when you wrote your first book, or you knew that you were going to be a writer?
It's so funny because when I was in elementary school, all of my teachers said I would grow to become a famous writer. I never really believed that. I think I've always had a very vivid, crazy kind of imagination. So whenever I had assignments, I I think I probably turned into crazy stories. um, as a child, both my parents are retired educators. So as a child, in the 3rd grade, my mother had me take speed reading. And in the 6th grade, I was reading a book a day, literally. I read The Yearling, that's like 1,100 pages in like 2 days when I was in the 6th grade. So I was like a sponge. And my father had what we call the study, but it was really a lower basement. So at any time growing up as a child, we had probably at least 5,000 books in our basement. So I would just read, everything. And so, but as far as me becoming Zane, that didn't happen until November of '97, and then I just really just played around until 2000 when I put out my first book.
What made you become Zane?
Good question. No, what really happened is, and I rarely tell this story, but my father is actually, he's been retired, but he is one of the most well-known theologians in the world. He actually got his PhD from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. He has taught at Oxford, University in England, the University of Argentina, Duke, Yale, Harvard. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, he's very, prestigious. And a lot of his books, he probably has at least as many books out as I do, but a lot of his are used as, textbooks or reading guides in numerous universities. And he's been the president of 2 seminaries. But all that being said, at the time that I became Zane, my father was teaching. He was a PhD professor at Duke University. And he had me hired to be his research assistant. So the Duke Divinity School sent me this computer. And this was when the internet was still, kind of fairly new. So I get online, while I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I, sign up for a Miracle Online account. Next thing you know, I'm in chat rooms and stuff, and I was using the name, my original screen name was Patience, which ended up being what I called myself on Zane Sex Chronicles. That's why that name had that meaning. And I went into a chat room and someone said, well, what's your real name? And that was the first thing I thought of, having no idea that I would literally become this Zane person. So that's where that came from. And then one night I was just fooling around. I was bored. So I wrote this story called First Night. And it was just about this couple who went up to this bed and breakfast inn and had this romantic evening. And I, wrote the thing. So I sent it to about 5 people I had met in the chat room. And the next thing you know, they started passing it around to different people. I started getting all these emails from people saying it was the hottest thing they've ever read. Have I written anything else? Can they be on my mailing list? I'm like, I didn't even know what a mailing list was. So what happened, so I said, I thought it was kind of funny. So I wrote 2 more stories called The Seduction and the Airport. And I put all 3 of them on my free America Online web space. And by that time, maybe about 40 people had emailed me. And so I emailed them back and sent them the link. And the next thing you know, within like 3 weeks, my little link had gotten about 9,000 hits from word of mouth alone. And then America Online took it down. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started. Then I started, posting on these different boards and stuff. And again, and then like I started like a monthly, what I called erotica e-zine, where I would have jokes, dirty jokes in one of my stories and different tips. And it just kind of took off from there. People started emailing me for advice. And then I started Erotica Noir in 1999. And a rumor got started. I had a book out and everybody was looking for the book. And I was thinking, I'm not putting out a book. So what I did, because I had been, just doing this for free for so long, and by that time I had long written Addicted. I had never planned to publish Addicted, which is really crazy. I just had it sitting on my computer, and so I decided to do a test. So I put on my website, for $10 plus $2 shipping and handling, I'll send you 10 stories I've never put on the internet before. And I'm thinking, I'm probably going to get 10 orders. It was like literally, I was at Staples, Office Depot all day long, every day, trying to print out this stuff. So then at that point, I said, you know what? I probably really could, sell a book. But the problem was nobody knew I was Zane. So I don't know how people know this, but for 5 years, I can honestly say that I lived a double life. So, because what happened, at the time I was living in North Carolina, and very small town. And one night, one of my friends who worked for Freightliner Trucks, her name is Dee. So she worked the second shift from 3 to 11. So about midnight, I hear this banging on my door, and I think it's an emergency. So she comes in, she's like, oh my gosh, she said, you've got to read this. You have got to read this. It's a true story. She said, the guys at my job were printing this out and passing it around, and you just got to read. It's about this guy named Zane. So she hands it to me, and it's my story, The Airport. So I'm playing all dumb. So I was like, well, I'm tired, Dee. I said, you know what? I'm going to read it in the morning. Let me read it in the morning, because I couldn't sit there and pretend to read something, that I knew that I had wrote. So it was really comical because my parents didn't know I was Zane. Nobody knew I was Zane. My parents didn't know I was Zane until I had 3 books on the Essence bestseller list at the same time. And the way, but it was crazy because I was still working my corporate job. I said, this is real stupid. Because the only reason I was still doing stuff was trying to put on pretenses, because I knew if I quit my job, my parent and was still able to take care of my kids and support my parents were going to think I was like a hooker or something, So I said, this is really crazy. So one time, about a year before then, my parents and we were going to, I think, somewhere for Thanksgiving. And I sat in the car, I joked, I said, I'm thinking about writing a book and putting it under, a different name. And they're like, well, why would you do that? So I just kind of dropped it. So one day my mother and I were in the car one Saturday, and I said to her, I said, you remember when I said I might write a book and put it out under another name? She was like, yeah. And I just kind of started giggling. And she was like, you did it, didn't you? And I just said, you know what, stop by. We were going past a CVS. I said, can you stop? I need to get something. So I go in there and I get a copy of Essence, and I come back out and I open it up and I say, this Zane person, that's me. And she's like, what? I was like, I'm, the person who has these, it was the Sex Chronicles, Shattering the Myth, Addicted, and Shame on It All on the list. So my mother's like, well, she was just confused. So she takes me back to my house, and I'm hoping she's not even going to come in because I knew what was coming next. So she comes in and she's like, well, I want to see a book. And of course I had 2 books hidden in my closet, and because I used storage, nobody really knew I was Zane. So I go up there and I'm thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? So I look at the table of contents for the Sex Chronicles, I cannot give her this book. So, because I'm just reading my table of contents, and I said, no. So I finally went back down there because she would not leave. And I went back down there and I gave her a copy of Addicted. And it was just pretty comical from that point on. But nobody knew at all. So it was an interesting thing, but really crazy. Now that I look back on it, it was really crazy.
Is it more fun now that people know who you are, or was it more fun having that double life?
Well, a lot of people still don't kind of don't know who I really am. But yeah, it was real interesting to do it that way and have literally no one know that I was doing it. And it's so funny because what happened with my first Cinemax show, so Cinemax called me in and they said, we want to do a show based on your book, The Sex Chronicles, the short stories, the vignettes and stuff. And I said, okay, fine. So I had lunch with one of the top executives there. And after, he got to know me, he was like, he said, this is so funny. He was like, I'd rather the show be about you. So that's how it turned into kind of 2 shows in one, because Zane's Sex Chronicles is really based on my real life and how I got started, how none of my friends knew who I was, and, all of that kind of stuff. So it turned out to be, an interesting thing. Yes?
How long did it take you to write a book?
It varies. One, I haven't finished. I've been the longest book in history, but I'm about to finish it. My agent actually said something to me about that. She's like, that book is 95% finished. She always says that once a year. The shortest book I think I've ever written probably was Shame on It All. And that took me about 10 days. I wrote Addicted in 19 days.
And how many pages?
Addicted, I don't know how many pages, it's about 94,000 words. Yeah, it's about 94,000 words. Mm-hmm.
Did you have a background in writing?
I actually, when I started college, I actually placed out of the required English classes. So I just took a creative writing course, all that kind of stuff. My parents were really big. I come from a family where we were all in competition. because, well, both my parents graduated valedictorian. And then I have 3 older siblings, and everybody excelled. And the one closest to me actually skipped 2 grades in elementary school. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? You know, it's like she skipped 2 grades in elementary school. She actually learned how to fly a plane. She was one of those people that went out at like 13 or 14 and took flying lessons and learned how to fly a plane before she could drive a car. Also, so when I came along, I was like, dang it, you know. So what am I going to do? So what I ended up doing is, well, I went to, I was scheduled, I lived in Maryland, and I was supposed to go to this high school near where we lived. But my mother taught in Washington, D.C., and I just told her, I'm going to the high school across the street from you. I was determined I was telling her, you know, I'm doing it, you know, I don't care what you say, all that kind of stuff. And at the time, my father was the president of the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta. So I kept telling my mother, I'm going to Coolidge, I'm going. So next thing you know, she put me on the plane. She said, you going down there? Because my parents, they've been married for, 61 years. So, but anyway, she put me on the plane. I'm thinking I'm just going to visit my father, you know, for the week. It's summertime, but it was right before school was supposed to start. I get down there, he picks me up, takes me, he said, you're going to go take this test for this high school. I said, huh? He said, you're going to go take this test for this new high school that's opening here in Atlanta. So he took me to take the test. And next thing you know, I'm stuck in Atlanta. So but I was determined, but because I had moved from another area, you know, there were some courses I didn't have that I needed to graduate. And so what I ended up doing, I said, I am graduated early. I don't care what nobody says. So I went and I took 6 courses in summer school and got straight A's in them. And then I convinced Spelman to let me be the first student they ever had that was in high school and college at the same time. That's how determined I was. So I actually was their guinea pig. I was the first young lady they ever let go there who was still in high school. And now they have a lot of jointly enrolled students. But I decided, okay, so this is good, you know. So I was going to high school in the morning and college in the afternoon. I said, but the sister that I was talking about was a senior at Spelman when I started. And she was a senior, she was 19. I was like, okay, you know. So, so what I decided to do, so I was going to high school, I was going to college, I was living on campus, and then I decided to go to this business school at night too. So I was doing all of that. So all that's to say that, you know, I do have, you know, and even with my own kids, I have 3 children, and I taught all of them how to read myself. And my oldest son, when he started college, he placed out of the required English courses. And my little 11-year-old, who just turned 11, when he took his standardized test this year, he actually tested post-high school for all of the English classes and stuff. Yeah. Yes.
Do you plan on teaching any writing courses?
You know, I did one, and it turned out really well. Actually, a young lady in Atlanta came up to me and said she had attended it and how beneficial it was to her. So what I probably am going to do, it was a writing and publishing boot camp. When the new book comes out, I probably will do some additional courses. Yeah. Yes.
Do people ever confuse your writing subject matter for you as the real person?
Yes. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Funny story of how they conflict.
Well, I mean, I get a lot of, you know, letters and stuff. People think I'm really one of the characters in my book, you know, that kind of stuff. But a lot of people really do think that I'm like, and that couldn't be further from the case. I'm one relationship, you know, and you know, I'm divorced, but I'm in a relationship, but I'm divorced. Actually, my ex-husband, I've known him since I was 10 years old, and I actually told him, he still has a picture I gave him when I was 10 with my little dog, then where I said that I was going to marry him. Yeah, so no, I haven't. You know, my other personality is the one that's out running around being a whore. Yeah.
What do your kids think of some of your books?
You know, my oldest son just turned 27, and he actually is doing a little bit of writing himself. He actually had a story in my book, Z-rated, called "Come See a Man About a Horse." He's working on his first novel. My daughter is 19. She's actually entering her junior year. in criminal justice. You know, that's nothing. Like my daughter has only been in college 2 years, but she has 85 credits. A long story, but anyway, because she's jump started too. And then my little one. You know, honestly, my parents just look at me as mommy. They don't care. You know, they don't care. I was recently reading the article. I don't know if anybody saw it from the CEO of PepsiCo, the lady, and it was so funny because I could relate to what she was saying because she said the night that she was named, you know, originally president of Pepsi and was told she was going to be on the board and all that stuff, she ran home all excited because she's been married for a long time, has kids, and her mother is like standing at the top of the steps in the garage and says, "You need to go get some milk." And she's like, "But I have something I had to tell you, something exciting happened." She's like, "You need to go get the milk." And she's like, "Well, you know," she saw her husband's car. She was like, "Well, why did he go get it?" She said, "Look, just go get the milk." So she got mad, left, went and got the milk, came back, and she said, "Okay, look, today I got named, you know, president of Pepsi." And her mother's like, "That's great, but when you come in this house, you know, you need to leave all of that, you know, out of things." So my kids are much the same way. You know, my ex-husband and I really made our daughter, because I don't think that young women need to try to find validation with men as a child. I used to make her brothers always tell her how beautiful she was in the morning. You know, and they would roll their eyes like, "Oh, you look lovely." You know, I would make them, you know, and I would always call her, you know, princess and all that. So when she went to college her first year, she was about 2 hours away. She's like, "Mommy, I need you to come up here and drive me to the hairdresser." You know, I'm like, "Look, okay, you better learn how to catch a cab." She didn't know how to do anything, you know, so she really thought she was a princess because that's the way, you know, we treated her. So she's still that way now. You know, I'm on sure she's like, "Mommy, she lives by herself. She's like, 'Mommy, I need you. You need to come back.'" You know, because she always wants me to do stuff for her. So they don't even see it that way is what I'm basically saying. Yes.
Are all your characters fictional?
Well, I mean, they're fictional, yes, but a lot of them are based on somewhat people I know or a culmination of people that I know, or just different traits that I see that are common in people. Now, some of my friends laugh because some of the stuff relates to them, particularly on the Sex Chronicles. They laugh about that. Like there was a scene on the Sex Chronicles where the character Mara Cruz was talking about she had finally had her first orgasm, and she thought she had had a seizure. She was talking about. So I have a friend who, believe it or not, is actually a doctor. And when she had her first orgasm, she thought she had a seizure. She called me. She's like, "I think I just had a seizure." You know? So I put that on there. And then I have another friend who's a flight attendant who, you know, right before I wrote the Sex Chronicles, I had met up with her in Atlanta. And she comes into the restaurant, and she's like tall and gorgeous and all this. So she comes into this restaurant, and she, you know, starts explaining to me how she had gone to her OBGYN and told him to show her her G-spot. And it was so funny because she put her long leg up on the table. She's like, I was like, "Show me," because I'm sick of all these other women saying they having these orgasms and stuff. You know, it was so funny. So I ended up having one of the characters in the lyric, who was the doctor. This woman comes into and wants to find her G-spot. So a lot of the stuff, yeah, is kind of true. Because it's just funny. I mean, I thought that was funny for her to go to her doctor, "Show me my G-spot," you know. So.
I have one more question.
Uh-huh.
Because the book that you wrote, I can't remember the name of it, but the lady that had two personalities. One was
Nervous. Yeah, that's
Okay.
nervous.
Now, was that fictional? Because
That was definitely fictional. You thought that was real?
I thought that was real.
No, I do not have a multiple personality disorder at all. Yeah, but no. I just thought, again, it was, to me, I always try to challenge myself. So for me, I wanted to see if I could really, you know, pull that off. Hmm. But, you know, it's definitely, not to say there are not people out there doing that. But, you know, Jude was like over the top. And like the new book, Vengeance, the main character in Vengeance, even worse. She's even worse, yeah, yeah.
Do you have a lot of people that edit your stuff, or is it like a small?
They edit my particular books? Mm-mm. No. For my books? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, you know, I edit a lot of the books that I publish. But no, nobody messes with my... The way you see this book, everything is the way, you know, that I turned it in. You know, this is my book, so nobody tells me how to... You know, because I mean, who's really gonna? I'm so crazy. Who's gonna really try to like, okay, say, well, maybe instead of this. Now I will say there's one scene that somebody recommended I take out of this book, and I'll just say it involved a toothbrush in the shower, and I decided, okay, I don't want anybody to get hurt, so I did decide to take that out. But at some point, I'm gonna put that in another book. But she just thought, she was like, oh my gosh, she was like, somebody's gonna get hurt trying to do that. And so I said, you know what, I probably should take it out. Yes.
How do you come up with the names of your characters? Like Chemistry, I just think it's like the most amazing name.
You know how I got the name Chemistry? A lot of times I make them or I just hear someone, but honestly, someone emailed me for advice named Chemistry. And when I posted her email on Facebook, I even said, well, nobody knew what the name was. I just said in my response, you have such a unique name. I've never heard that before. And even people on Facebook were like, well, what was her name? What was her name? You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, actually somebody emailed me named Chemistry. And I thought that was such a, different name. So that's where I got that particular one from. Mm-hmm.
Where do
Folks, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, yes.
Where do you go to write? Are you at home, or do you have a special place where you script?
Everywhere, but normally it does come down to me locking myself away somewhere. And I do have different places where I do that, like all throughout the country. I'll go and I'll lock myself up somewhere if I'm really on a deadline and just need to concentrate, because I do better when I can go into a zone. But for the most part, I can actually write anywhere, but I often get distracted. So for me, like when I'm writing, especially if I'm writing a whole television series, because I wrote all of, every single script for every episode myself, I'll lock myself away to do that. And like currently I'm working on several new television and film projects. So for each one of those, I'm probably going to have to ultimately just lock myself in.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Was it a soft bristle toothbrush or? Folks, thanks so much for being here. We have the books all for sale out at the counter, all the backlist, the newer one. She will sit here and sign them for you, maybe take a few more questions while she's signing. For those of you online, give us a call. We'll get a book signed for you. We'll ship it to you. Yeah. It's about 97% humidity outside, too. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.